Okay, we are recording. So let's start talking about these things. First, we are going to go over Vegas. We're going to look through the Vegas lines and kind of like dissect the over unders. We're going to think about a little bit about where the money is going in each individual game. We're going to think a little bit about what it means for the games and for game stacks and stuff like that. And then we'll move into the models and we'll move into projections and stacks and everything like that. So let's take a look at this. Like I said last week, I usually just use the Fantasy Labs NFL Vegas tab. I think they do a good job and make it a really, really digestible thing. Make it so that you can get an idea of what you want to look at pretty easily. So I just have this sorted by over-under right now so that we can see what games and teams have the highest over-unders for the slate as of now. The top one is Dallas and the Chargers. And, look, everybody is going to be on this game. There's not anybody that I think in the industry that is under projecting this game. Like, everybody has it as a really, really high total. Everybody has it with high projections on the main pieces. And all of that makes sense, right? Like, Dallas came out and dropped back a million times going up against Tampa Bay. Granted, some of that was game flow oriented, but they threw a lot, man. And there's no reason to think that they are not going to throw a lot in this game either. The Chargers came out and looked really, really competent against the Washington football team in week one. They were throwing deep down the field. They were letting Herbert kind of get just be loose and just do what he needed to do and look where he needed to look. It's also worth noting that Mike Williams looks like he has a more expanded route tree. I know that this has been kind of like said across the industry, but it's something that I think does need to be said and does need to be paid attention to. So, both these teams have really high octane offenses and really, really good skill players. Dallas and the Chargers both have really, really competent wide receiver ones in Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, and then really good wide receiver twos in CeeDee Lamb and Mike Williams. So there's going to be potentially a lot of fireworks in this game. It opened at 52, moved up to 54.5, but 68% of the bets have been on the over. So it's not like this is any reverse line movement or anything like that. People expect this game to be high scoring, and that hasn't been hidden by anyone. But this game being the highest total on the slate makes a lot of sense. Next one would be the Chargers, the Chiefs and the Ravens, 54.5. This game is not on the main slate, so we won't talk too much about it. Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites over the Ravens. But, that game should be a party, for sure. Then we have the Titans and the Seahawks at 53.5. This game has been bet up as well. 69% of the bets on the over. Titans came out and looked a little bit flat in week one. Up against the Cardinals. Cardinals just looked really, really, really good. So I'm not sure that it was one way or the other, but the Seahawks are 6.5-point favorites over the Titans, which is pretty wild. I would think that this would be a closer game between these two teams. It would seem to me that maybe there's a little bit of an overreaction, that the Seahawks are not as good as Vegas thinks that they are. They came out and had a really, really good performance in week one, but it's only a matter of time before Pete Carroll gets in his own way. So I think that this game is probably closer, and Titans I think are probably going to close a little bit closer than 6.5. My guess would be like 5.5, 6. But personally, I think it's lined something more like 5, 4.5. So having a high total here is really, really cool. I have a lot of interest in stacks on either side of this. If you just drop down, there's going to be so much ownership on this game that if you just drop down 1 point, the over-under drops 1 point. And you can get probably, half the ownership on this game. You're not going to get any ownership on Julio Jones. You're not going to get any ownership on Tyler Lockett. You're not going to get any ownership on these guys, even though the total is pretty high. So I really, really like this game, to attack this game. Keep moving down the list. We have a couple at 51 to close out the totals over 50. We have Minnesota and the Cardinals sitting at 51. With the Cardinals being 3.5-point favorites, and then we have Tampa Bay and the Falcons sitting at 51. But this total isn't really 51. This total is just this is just Vegas projecting Tampa Bay to just kick the shit out of the Falcons. So yeah, it's a total of 51, but the Bucks are 12-point favorites, and it's been bet closed a little bit. 55% of the total bets are on the Bucks, but it has moved out of their favor 1.5 points. So like there's some sharp money on the spread here for the Falcons. I think the Falcons look pretty dusted week 1. Like Matt Ryan didn't look good. The play calling was really, really bad and like unimaginative. And there was a lot of running on 1st and 10 and they just looked really, really bad. So I don't know, 12 points is a lot to lay on any team in the league, but Tom Brady against dusted Falcons team, that makes sense, I guess. I would take the Falcons spread if I was a betting man, but I'm not going to do it in this spot. I'd rather just pass on it. Regardless, the Bucks have the highest team total on the slate at 32. So you should have some interest in them, right? Like you should have some interest in Tom Brady to Antonio Brown, Tom Brady to Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans. Like any of these guys are in the mix. The hard part about stacking the Bucks is really that they don't have a super skinny route tree, so it's kind of harder to stack them. After them, we come into this like high 40s range. We have the 49ers versus the Eagles, which is a 49 over-under, with 49ers being 3-point favorites. I'm surprised at this line a little bit. I don't think the Eagles are this good. So 49ers being favorites here, I would expect them to be bigger favorites. But maybe I'm underestimating Jalen Hurts. I don't know. I'm told that I'm a Jalen Hurts hater. So, maybe that's my thing here. But 49 over-under, that's actually pretty high. We need to see inactives for the 49ers, but there could be some fantasy goodness in this game. Devontae Smith was really, really good for the Eagles last week. They had a pretty clear route, a pretty clear wide receiver tree of Devontae Smith to Jalen Reagor, and then Dallas Goedert. So they have a pretty skinny route tree. San Francisco, Trent Sherfield obviously beat out Brandon Ayuk, quote-unquote beat out for week 1. But we'll see if Brandon Ayuk is back in there. I don't know. We'll see how it is. Situation that matters more for this, of course, is going to be who is the running back for the 49ers. I don't think anybody knows. Another game that's not on the main slate, this Green Bay-Detroit game. Green Bay is a 12-point favorite, 11.5-point favorite over the Lions, who are just trash. So that makes sense. I don't have anything else to say about that. Aaron Rodgers should come back with a vengeance. And then we have a couple here at 48. We have the Bills and the Dolphins sitting at 48 with the Bills 3.5-point favorites. We have the Browns and the Texans at a 48-point total with the Browns being 13-point favorites. My God. And then we have the Rams and the Colts being 48 points on the over-under with the Rams being 3.5-point favorites. Of these three, I don't know. The Texans came out and I guess shocked the DFS world and actually put up a really good game up against Jaguars, but I think that's more I think smart people in the industry kind of had their questions about Urban Meyer maybe being an idiot, and it's those were justified. Those thoughts were justified in week 1 of getting just beat down by this Texans team that's kind of devoid of talent. So 13 points though, man. I don't know. I don't think the Browns should be 13-point favorites against very many teams. Maybe against the Texans, I guess I get it. But teams that focus a lot on the running game and not on the passing game, and especially when they're missing their main pieces, they're missing OBJ again. So I wouldn't take 13 points for the Browns here. That line is kind of screwy. 48-point total is really high. Nick Chubb should be popular in DFS this week. I don't think that he will be, but he should be. It's the same spot that James Robinson was in last week. Obviously, James Robinson didn't pay off, but Nick Chubb is the one who you want when they're massive favorites. So if you buy this 13-point favorites, Nick Chubb should be one of your favorite plays of the week. And then the Rams, Colts, another interesting game. Carson Wentz looked just as bad in week 1 as he did with the Eagles. The O-line, I guess, is they have their own problems, but Carson Wentz doesn't make things any better, right? And Michael Pittman was popular last week, won't be popular this week, I don't think, after laying a goose egg. So there could be some flop lag there that we can take advantage of. But the Rams looked incredible. Have a lot of interest in the Rams. Only 3.5-point favorites over the Colts. I think they should be significantly higher favorites over the Colts. I think the Rams are probably like a top 5 team in the league right now, if not higher. They should be like 7-point favorites here. So like go slam that spread for the Rams. I mean 70% of the bets are on the Rams to cover that, and it's moved the other way. So maybe I'm a sheep, maybe I'm a donkey. I don't know, but like the Rams should just decimate in this spot. Over under 48 is pretty nice though. There should be some interesting DFS here. I think that a Ram stack might be pretty chalky. 47 over under here with the Steelers over the Raiders. Steelers are 6.5-point favorites over the Raiders. I think that's about right. Nothing like shocking here. I'm a little surprised at how low the team total is for the Raiders, I guess. But in order to raise that, you'd have to raise the over under, and I don't think that's right. So I guess you kind of just like take this at face value and say the Raiders maybe got lucky last week, but they did pass a lot. So this game, I think, has the potential to be way higher scoring than Vegas has it. The Broncos and the Jaguars. Really interesting thing about the Broncos and the Jaguars. And, like, I'll show you guys this really quick. Hold on. Let's see. So, like, even though the Jaguars looked terrible last week, like, when you look at them from just like a pass splits and like an offensive production standpoint, like the Jaguars had a really, really good pass rate and a really, really high pass expectation. So like, even though they looked terrible, they still are kind of like in this spot where up against a Denver team that looked pretty good in terms of explosive passing, like it's the top game in terms of explosive passing. Jacksonville had 3.46% more explosive passes than the league average in that first game. And Denver is allowing 4% over expectation. So like this is a pretty good spot for both Jacksonville and Denver. Now, if you think that Jacksonville is terrible, and I don't blame you, or if you think that Denver was a fluke in week 1, then I don't blame you. But like there's upside for these teams. And I think that people are just going to look over it, especially with no Jerry Jeudy for Denver. That route tree should be really, really, condensed to just like Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, maybe a little bit of Tim Patrick. And Jacksonville obviously has like DJ Chark, and that's it. Like they pass, I guess, a little bit to their auxiliary pieces, but it's pretty much just DJ Chark. So there's a really, really nice opportunity there, I think, for really low ownership on some cheaper guys. They're going to have some really inflated market shares. But, yeah, I mean, the over-under here is not inspiring confidence, just 45. Super middling. It's about split halfway. 70% of bets are on the Broncos to cover that 6.5, but then it went down a little bit. So people think or there's some sharps thinking the Jags can cover that. And that week 1 is gonna have some serious overreactions. So something to think about. Let's see. Moving on. So we have another couple 45s. Bengals and the Bears sitting at 45. The Bears are somehow 2-point favorites with Andy Dalton at QB. That's just moronic. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals were favorites by lock tomorrow. Like I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, unless like Justin Fields gets named the starter. In which case the Bears should be like 4-point favorites or something. But the Bengals looked really, really good in terms of their explosive passing in week 1, but they ran a lot. So maybe they were protecting Joe Burrow. I don't know, but the pass rate was not fantastic, so that's a little bit concerning. This game probably could suck a lot. We have the Saints and the Panthers. Saints 3.5-point favorites, over under 45. The public is betting the over, but like it dropped down a point, so sharps are on the under here. I don't know, man. Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey going up against each other. Like, you could literally play them against each other, and there would be nothing wrong with that. Outside of them, like, Darnold didn't look like he had a lot of explosive passing in him. And the Saints looked really, really good, but Jameis Winston didn't have to do much. So this is probably more of a wait-and-see situation than anything else. But, I mean, some of the pieces are still pretty cheap. And you can get Marquez Callaway as flop lag here too. The Patriots and the Jets. The Patriots are 6-point favorites over the Jets. Man, ew. It's over under just 43. Damian Harris looked really good in week 1, but that's it between these two teams. Like, nothing else. I guess Corey Davis looked good for the Jets, but, like, yeah, the Jets get back, like, some pass catchers. They should have both Jameson Crowder and Keelan Cole, so expect that ball to be passed around a little bit more. But Damian Harris should be really, really good in this game. 6-point favorites for the Patriots, who love to be run heavy in the red zone. 81% of the bets are on the Patriots to cover that 3.5-point spread, and now moved all the way up to 6. So that's a really good spot for Damian Harris. And then obviously New York and Washington was a shit show on Thursday. So yeah, anyway, we have some pretty good over-unders. We have some pretty good spots to attack. Most of the ownership is going to be on this Chargers and Cowboys game, which I get. I'm very interested in this Tennessee and Seahawks game. I'm also very interested in the Buffalo stack. I think Buffalo stack makes a lot of sense. And I kind of have some interest in this Las Vegas and Pittsburgh stack, man. I think that with how much the Raiders passed in week 1 and with Josh Jacobs being out, I think they don't ratchet that back. Darren Waller obviously, had like 19 targets or some shit. Deontay Johnson is still really, really good. Like, you can use Hunter Renfrow. This is a really, really cheap stack if you think this is going to go over. So, some interesting spots. Yeah. Let's see. RDR fan 22. They have some defensive side injuries, but yeah, -3 is surprising. Yeah. Who was that? That was 49ers, right? Yeah. -3 is low. That's really low. I'm really, really surprised it's -3. Like, I don't think that anything would lead me to thinking that that's only a 3-point spread. That's super surprising. So I think that probably gets bet up to at least 4, if not like 4.5 by lock. I'd just be really surprised if it's set at 3. How would you rate Kareem Hunt garbage time if the Browns get that far ahead? Bad. Like, Kareem Hunt, he's not going to salt away the clock. Like, that's why they have Nick Chubb. If they get behind, then they have more opportunities to use 2-minute drills, and like they're going to use Kareem Hunt more in passing situations, stuff like that. So, Kareem Hunt in this game, like, garbage time, bad. Regularly, I'm okay with Kareem Hunt in this game. I think that really any running back can be used in like a 13-point favorite situation. You should just have interest in the running backs in that situation, or the pass game. Like, if you think they're just gonna, because like, think if the Browns score 30 points, like, the scoring had to come from somewhere. If they blow them out, the scoring had to come from somewhere. So it can be either the passing attack or it can be the running attack. The usual safe bet is on the running game, especially with a running back like Nick Chubb. He should just be able to take this game over. So. But Kareem Hunt, I mean, if Kareem Hunt is in there on the plays where they actually get in the end zone, like, he's going to soak up all the fantasy points. So it's just a risk reward. I think the Kareem Hunt's floor is really, really low, but his ceiling is just as high. With Nick Chubb, his floor is really, really good, and his medians are better, but the ownership should likely be higher. I mean, I don't know, like, where are we seeing the ownership here for Nick Chubb? Because it should be high. Only 13%? That's not that high. I could play him at 13%. I could play him at like 20%. Pass rate for the Jags inflated because they were trailing the entire time. So, like, no. Because even when they weren't trailing, like, I mean, they were trailing the entire time, but, like, even in the first quarter, I think Carlos Hyde finished with 2 rushing attempts in the first quarter. And that, like, in the first quarter, it's pretty much almost entirely scripted. Like, you're not reacting really to what the other team is doing in the first quarter. You're scripting through the first, like, 20 plays. Carlos Hyde had 1 rushing attempt, I think, the first, like, 10 minutes, maybe ended with 2 in the first quarter. They just didn't They just didn't run. They didn't want to. So I'm willing to believe that Urban Meyer's just like, screw rushing in the NFL. We're just going to pass a lot. We have Trevor Lawrence. We have good pass catchers. Let's just throw the fucking ball. But I don't know. I think that Jacksonville's going to throw a lot. And they're going to be super duper low owned. Denver's going to be super duper low owned. And there's upside there. I think there's upside on the Jags. Even if they suck, I think there's upside. Am I doing a trip stack with Buffalo or just Allen Diggs? And if 3, what's your third wide receiver? I will, because of how much the Jaguar or the Bills like to pass, I think that it's worthwhile to do 2 if you want to. You certainly don't have to. Hold on, let me bring up my play data again. So the pass splits for Buffalo. They passed 75% of the time in the adjusted script, which is really, really high. And the goal line is the only thing that worries me, really. They passed less in the goal line in like red zone splits. So in the entire game, they passed 71% of the time. In the red zone, they only passed 63% of the time, which is a little bit concerning. Like, you want teams that are going to pass a lot when they're in the red zone. That way, you are getting the upside from your passing stack because like you need touchdowns to win GPPs. But I think on a slate like this, like, I don't mind going back to Emmanuel Sanders. I was on Emmanuel Sanders last week in week 1, and he just missed a bomb, like just missed a long touchdown that would have like been huge for all Buffalo stacks for Paydirt because I was touting Emmanuel Sanders a lot. And if I do go with a 3 stack, it'll be Diggs with it'll be Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders for sure, like without a doubt. And I do have interest there, right? Like, outside of, like, if we look at the projections, like, I have Seattle at the top, and then I have Dallas and the Chargers sitting here 2nd and 3rd, and then I have Buffalo. And Buffalo's right there, like, projecting for 68 as an aggregate projection, right there with the Chargers. And then Tennessee is right there at 65, right? So, like, I think the ownership on Buffalo is going to be really, really low. You can bring it back with, like, Devontae Parker or Jalen Waddle, whatever you want to do there. And it's going to work out fine. Emmanuel Sanders got a decent amount of usage. Yeah, and he got a lot of air yards. Like, he had significant air yards advantages over the rest of the Buffalo wide receivers. You like Waddle versus Buffalo, Tim Patrick, or MVS versus the Lions Monday night? Let's take a look. So in the projections, let's look up Waddle. I have Waddle projected for 13. Patrick, I think, probably projected less, right? Would be my guess. No, I have Tim Patrick projected for 18. And then, what was it, MVS? I have no idea how to spell his name. I fuck it up every time. Oh, I don't even have him projected yet. But it's going to be lower than Tim Patrick. So I'll go with Tim Patrick there. Do I see Atlanta play calling being this stupid rest of the season? How can they run that much down that much? It's moronic. Bro, fucking, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's a mystery, really. Like, if I go over to the adjusted pass, like, Atlanta passed 62% of the time, but in the adjusted sample, they only passed 54% of the time. It's the 3rd worst in the league. Only Detroit passed less, and New Orleans. So, like, New Orleans passed only 36% of the time in the adjusted script. Detroit passed 53% in the adjusted script, and Atlanta passed 54%. And, like, I've been, like, down on Atlanta because I thought that Julio Jones was so important to them and unlocking that offense and being really good for Matt Ryan, and they might just be fucked. I don't know if they're going to be running on 1st and 10 down, like, 13 in the 4th quarter. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know what to do about that. So, yeah, I think they're going to be shitty the rest of the season. I think that they're not going to be competing for anything. Matt Ryan might be dust. Calvin Ridley probably was being... I mean, like, Calvin Ridley still might be really good, but Russell Gage isn't good, and Kyle Pitts is a rookie, and, like, they only have Mike Davis back there as a running back, and I just think they're a bad team. I think they're a bad team, and they know they're a bad team, and that they probably just need to tank. So, yeah. Does that make Ridley and Pitts unplayable? I have Kyle Pitts projected for 9.7 fantasy points. I have Calvin Ridley projected for 19. So, like, not great at all. Like, I basically have Calvin Ridley at less than a 1% chance of being the top overall scoring wide receiver. I have Kyle Pitts at a 3% chance of being top overall tight end on the slate. So, it's going to be bad, I think. Are your sites tools like air yard search, etc. shining application? Yes, they are. Hatter, yep. So, yep. Hatter answering those questions. He did indeed teach me how to make them, and those will be updated after this week. There's no reason to have an air yard search or an opportunity search after 1 week. It's just one data point. So, but those will be updated next week. I guess Arthur Smith was just a fake sharp who Henry made look good. I don't know about that, man. Like, I think, and I answered this in the Discord with David Hess, who I appreciate a lot. But, like, I think that offensive coordinators are meant to put talent into position to succeed. And when you don't have a lot of talent, like, there's only so much that you can do, right? Calvin Ridley, Mike Davis, and Russell Gage is a monumental downswing from A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and Derrick Henry. So, like, I don't know that Arthur Smith was bad. I just think that if you get that big of a downgrade in talent, like, of course there's going to be cracks that show, right? It's just going to be really, really hard. So, yeah. Anyway, RDR fan, I don't know if that question was to Hatter or myself, but I do most of my modeling in Python, as well as Excel and with my Excel stuff. So if it's Zach, then yeah, he does everything. He's a Python boy, for sure. For sure. All right, so we're going to now jump into stacks, and then we're going to jump into, we're going to talk through each game individually, because I like doing that better. And then we're going to talk about some individual players, and we're going to do that stuff. Yeah. All right. So, here we have the models. Here are them hot models. So, overall, like, as we're looking at this, Seattle's top overall projected at 79. They also have the top leverage at 24.43. That's going to happen when you have lower ownership, like, kind of middling ownership, on the team that has the highest overall projection. They're just going to have the highest leverage on the slate. And that makes sense. So, Seattle's the top overall. And then Tennessee is sitting here at, like, 7th, projecting at 65. They're still positive leverage as well. So, I do really like this Tennessee and Seattle game. I think that it's going to go way underlooked. I think that it's a really, really good spot to build out some game stacks. The hardest part is with Tennessee. Like, you kind of have to deal with that Julio Jones, A.J. Brown situation. And I think they get Julio Jones more involved this week. I hope they do. I'm going to probably go back to him. I had him last week. And just hope that they're able to have a better game this week. But yeah, Seattle top overall stack and, top overall projection. Dallas is sitting here with the second highest projection at 73, with the Chargers right behind them at 69.47. So, like I said, this is where all the ownership is going. It's no surprise that all the ownership is going here. It's the highest overall over-under on the slate. People are in love with Dallas. People are in love with the Chargers. So, this makes sense. Dallas with a 14% chance being top overall scoring stack, and the Chargers at a 9% chance. So, there's a lot of upside there. I certainly will want to have a Dallas Chargers stack tomorrow for sure. Next, I have Buffalo. Buffalo projects very, very well. I'm surprised that the algorithms like Cole Beasley over Emmanuel Sanders, and I've been thinking that for like 3 days or something like that. And it's for some reason it's giving Cole Beasley, but I prefer Emmanuel Sanders, and I will say that. Cole Beasley, I think, gets more targets, but Emmanuel Sanders is going to get the more beneficial targets and the higher upside targets for sure. The problem with a Buffalo stack is that Miami projects really, really bad. Even with a very condensed target tree, I basically just have it being Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle getting the vast majority of the targets, and they still project like trash. And so that says a lot about what their game plan is and what their upside is with Tua at quarterback. I don't know. It's hard. Like, I definitely would prefer the Buffalo side to this. The other stacks that I've already mentioned, the Seattle, Tennessee one, and the Dallas Chargers one, like, I could play either side of that, and I'd be happy with it. But with Buffalo, like, I'm just strictly staying on the Buffalo side, going Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, with either Emmanuel Sanders or Cole Beasley, and bring it back with one of Devontae Parker or Jalen Waddle. Certainly, I think that Devontae Parker is the better option, but like either one of them is going to be fine. I do think the ownership is going to be a little bit too high on somebody like Jalen Waddle. I think people are going to be really, really into him this week. You just saw VPM's projection on Dak, 4.4 value to boot. Yeah, I mean, if we run over to the VPM, like, sort by value, Dak Prescott's right there, right? Like 6,800. VPM has him at 30. I have him at 24.8. I certainly think that there are other quarterbacks that you can utilize, but I mean, VPM even has Justin Herbert and Tom Brady above Dak Prescott, but I have Dak Prescott projected above both of them. And the second highest projected quarterback on the slate, I think. So really, I mean, definitely think that you want to be on that. Both the props models and my models think that he's in a really, really good spot. We have Minnesota up here as a stack, projected 68 overall. The ownership is really, really low. There's a lot of really, really good leverage here. Going with something like Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen, or dropping off Adam Thielen and going Tyler Conklin. I don't hate that at all. Who do they face again? Minnesota is up against... I should have this memorized at this point. Cardinals. So that makes it really easy, right? Like, if you end up going with Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen, you just bring it back with DeAndre Hopkins. If you go with the Cardinals side, because I don't mind the Cardinals side either. It's projected a little bit less, projected at 62 with these guys, but overall going with just Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and then bringing it back with Justin Jefferson, I think that's a really, really good route to go. That would probably be my preference if I end up building with Arizona. And I do like building with Arizona. I like building with them every week. So I don't mind that. I always prefer, if it's a team like Minnesota, I prefer stacking their opponent because Minnesota will just run the ball if they can. In order to get them to pass and in order to unlock the upside of their pass catchers, you really need to stack up their opponent and hope their opponent puts up a lot of points to make them pass. That's just the way that I like to do it. Otherwise, you can do like Dalvin Cook and then bring it back to DeAndre Hopkins. I don't mind doing that because there's a very clear, like, if Dalvin Cook ends up being the top scoring running back on the slate, that means DeAndre Hopkins is likely coming from behind and getting a whole bunch of garbage time. Okay, so from Ganja Gamer Channel, yeah, but Ridley and Pitts are talented and Davis is a decent pass catcher, so running it in I form with CPAT is pretty idiotic. Totally fucking agree, bro. Totally fucking agree. Had our Arizona with one wide receiver or two. I prefer just going DeAndre Hopkins. He has a massive market share of targets, air yards, touchdowns, etc. And Kyler does run it a lot. And he runs it near the goal line a lot. So I prefer to just stack it with one. They don't pass enough to where having two of them makes a whole lot of sense. Like, Arizona only passed 52% of the time in the entire game last week. Now, granted, they were in the lead. The adjusted pass script was 70%. But, like, I mean, in the goal line, where were they in the goal line? I think they were middling in goal line stuff, too. Oh, no, they were super low. They had 7 pass attempts in the adjusted script, which was only half. They were only 50% pass in the red zone. So that's the problem. I just prefer a one-man stack with them, I think. All right, let's move on a little bit here. I talked about Denver. I think that Denver is a pretty good stack, especially with no Jerry Jeudy. Denver just projects really, really well. They actually had a pretty decent pass script in the adjusted rate. And then in the goal line, like, Denver has been near the top of the pass rate in the goal line for, like, 2 years straight now. Like, they really, really like passing in the red zone. So that unlocks a lot of upside for their wide receivers. The algorithmic combination is Teddy Bridgewater with Sutton and Tim Patrick. I might prefer Noah Fant over Tim Patrick or Noah Fant over Cortland Sutton even. I don't mind dropping from Sutton to Patrick. But definitely have interest in Denver. Like, for sure. And then we move into... we're going to show off Damascus really quick, actually, because Margaret wanted to come say hi. So we're going to go to the close-up. And then here's a baby.
I didn't necessarily want to say hi. I wanted to come in and ask you when you were going to be done, because I'm sure you can hear him screaming.
So anyway, Damascus is having a hard night. But, yeah. Anyway, this is Margaret. For those who have not met her, this is my child, Damascus, for those that did not tune in last week.
Really, take your time. You'll be fine.
And he'll be okay. Anyway, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the things. He does want to hang out with the guys. That's all that he wants in life. That is all that he wants in life. But yeah, Denver I think is a really, really good stack. Jacksonville I think is also an okay stack. They do not project near as well. Like Denver projects for 68 and Jacksonville just projects for 53. I think that speaks a lot to the difference between Teddy Bridgewater and Trevor Lawrence. The models respect Teddy Bridgewater a lot more right now. So, yeah. Anyway, let's jump into some questions because I got quite a few questions there. Chat about this later, but Edmonds' season again. Yeah, I know. Just Vegas loves him. Blender talked about Murray with Kirk, not Hopkins, as Murray-Kirk has more upside. Murray-Hopkins safer floor, but fades out in upside. I disagree with that. I think that DeAndre Hopkins, like, if they need something to happen, they go to Hopkins. So, like, Kirk technically from a point per dollar standpoint has more upside, but I think that DeAndre Hopkins actually has, like, real 40 fantasy point upside, whereas Christian Kirk, like, his best game within reason is like 28 or 29 fantasy points or something, which I think is like a reasonable median for DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, the Kirk combo would be less owned, but it's not going to be high owned anyway. Like, what do I have? What do I have that ownership at anyway? Kyler I have at 8%. Then Hopkins, I have it 12%. Like, I don't care about that, man. Like, anything that's not Chargers and Dallas is not going to be all that high owned today. So I'm not all that worried about that. When game stacking, what's preferred main run back configuration? Take Dallas Chargers for example. Quarterback, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Well, quarterback, receiver 1, receiver 2, because it can be a tight end, and then bring back with one receiver from the other team. It doesn't really matter like what you bring back from the other team, but if you are game stacking, then you're expecting that game to score a lot of points. Technically, what you're expecting to happen is that your stack. So for Dallas Chargers example, if you stack Dallas, you expect Dallas to put up like 35 real life points in like the first half, and then the Chargers have to pass from behind in order to catch up. So that means there's a lot of passing to their pass catchers, which unlocks their upside. That's basically what we're hoping for in game stacking. But there are different ways to do it. Like there's different circumstances. Like with Arizona, like I just want to go Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and bring it back with one pass catcher from the other team. With Buffalo, I don't mind doing it with 2. With the Ravens, like I just want to do it with Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown and then bring it back with one person from the other team. It's just important to have the correlation there. That's it. Let's see. Vegas is so much lower than Sutton, which is so interesting to see. Yeah. I was thinking that. Because I have Sutton projected like God. Right? Like I have Sutton projected for 26 fantasy points. Which is a significant amount. But I have Jamar Chase projected for 24. I have Chark 25. I'm just really high on wide receivers this week. I think that we saw a lot of passing in week 1. Like more than... Because like I regress my stuff. And we saw so much passing, and I think there's going to be like a league-wide adjustment towards more passing this year. I really do think there's going to be that. So I think Vegas is going to be lower on wide receivers overall. Like if you go over into the VPM model on the sheets, like you can see, we can just sort by diff, right? And we're going to see, like, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Hold on, I'll show you. So, like, I just sorted by diff in the VPM model. So this is the largest difference between the Patriot model and the VPM model, which is based on Vegas props. Like, wide receiver, 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 wide out, wide out, wide out, wide out. Like, look at all this. I mean, I'm higher on wide receivers pretty much across the board simply because I think that, like, Vegas just isn't going to be as high on them as they need to be. So I think there's more passing. Like, you can see in a lot of these different guys, like Philadelphia, Dallas. I think that Vegas is way under on this Dallas game. I think that, like, that there's a lot of teams that came out and had a lot of passing, and I think that Vegas is just under on them overall. Is Seattle similar to Minnesota where they will prefer to run and only throw if push? No. Seattle is fucking Pete Carroll just putting run or pass into a hat and figuring out what the fuck he wants to do. Hello, baby. Hello, baby. Hello, baby. Love you guys. Let's see. Do I think Waller is safer playing Kelsey now? The volume is ridiculous, though, even though worst QB? Fuck no. Absolutely not. No. No, I mean, Waller, like, the Chiefs will score, like, 30-plus real-life points every single week. So, like, Kelsey is just going to fucking get his. Waller could average 20 targets per game and still not match the safety and upside that Travis Kelsey has because the Raiders are bad. So, yeah, I don't think he's safer. I don't think he's good median either. Like, my median for him is even super low. How do you usually handle your defensive allocation according to how much variance the position has? Pay down. Just, like, fucking punt it. I pretty much just never care about defense. Like, one of the things that I like to do the most in large field GPPs is actually play the defense against one of the higher owned offenses. Just because, like, the variance is so high and being able to pay that far down at defense. Like, if you get a defensive touchdown against one of the highest owned offenses, like, it doesn't matter. Your defense is still probably the highest scoring on the slate. So I pretty much just don't care about it. I just punt it. Not saying it's wrong, just curious to see that big of a difference. Yeah, no. It's like, I'm just, like, explaining out why I think it's different. When do you think Javonte takes over for Gordon? I don't know. I don't think that he will. I think it's probably going to be very similar to a situation like they had with Philip Lindsay. Denver doesn't like to have a bell cow. They want to use multiple running backs. Like, no running back is going to take over. Like, maybe Javonte Williams ends up with like 55% of the rushing market share, but like it still doesn't matter. Neither one of them are going to be good for fantasy. What top T would you play as one-off? I probably wouldn't. On this slate, I don't know. Maybe I play Noah Fant as a one-off. Yeah, maybe I play Noah Fant as a one-off, but that's it. I don't really think you should be playing tight end one-offs. I talked about that with Blender on the Monday grind down, or like the morning show that I do with Blender on Mondays. Like, I think that playing one-off tight ends and punting tight ends is just not the way to go this year. I just think that correlating with your stack is much more important. Moore 5.9 looks pretty cheap. He had more divert route treating last season, and I think that he's just going to be like their guy this year. I think that like the Darnold and Robbie Anderson takes were silly. So DJ Moore is just very, very good. Would I be playing them as one-offs or just Waller or Kittle? I mean, like I said, I just don't think I'm going to play them as one-offs. So yeah, all right. Let's jump back in. Let's talk a little bit more about stacks. Talk a little bit more about how I feel about the games, and then we'll answer some more questions as we go in. So we got through basically Arizona, right? We've already talked about Arizona in that game with Minnesota. I prefer the Arizona side probably, but I don't hate going with Minnesota side. If I do go Arizona, it's Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins. I do not know that I will get to all three of these guys. Especially because, like, when you throw it in here, like, if you go into the roster construction tool and you just do these two, you end up with the projection of 50, right? Which is already, like, pretty high. So adding in, and your LevX is 14.43. So adding in Christian Kirk, like, your LevX goes down, and the projection only goes up 13 points. Like, there's probably better ways to go about it. For the money, you can just go with you can go with Cortland Sutton for 5,200, and like he projects like God, and the leverage is actually really really good. So I probably don't prefer to go with that. If I do go with a Arizona stack, it's gonna be this. It's gonna be Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, and then you can bring it back with Noah Fant, DJ Chark, or something like that. Like there are better one-offs and better secondary correlations that you can utilize. Cincinnati. Okay, so Cincinnati is a really, really interesting one because Vegas doesn't really like Cincinnati all that much, right? Like the over-under for the Cincinnati game is pretty low. It's only at 45, and like they're underdogs by 2 points. Bears are 2-point favorites. I do think the Bengals are going to be favorites by the time that lock hits. The problem is that like for the goal line splits, Cincinnati only passed 60% of the time in the red zone. And for the pass splits period, Cincinnati was really, really low. They only passed 63% of the time in the adjusted script, 47% of the time total, which is really, really low. So that's really concerning. So, Cincinnati and Chicago both bottom 10 in terms of adjusted pass rate. Neither one of them really want to be passing. It doesn't look like Chicago's not going to push the pace. So if Chicago doesn't push the pace, Cincinnati isn't going to have a reason to push the pace. I'm still high on Jamar Chase. I still think there's a lot of upside in this offense, but I don't know that there's a lot of stacking upside in this offense. So, a little worried about it. Chicago, like, I almost prefer the Chicago side. Because I think the only way that Cincinnati is actually going to push the pace and, like, unlock some upside is if Chicago ends up putting up a whole bunch of points. But then, like, maybe they just do that through David Montgomery, and this game just sucks, I think. I think this game, like, has the capacity to suck. Philadelphia. Okay, so Philadelphia and the 49ers. So the 49ers projection is really, really bad because 49ers just do not care to pass the ball in the red zone. Like, when you go and look at the red zone splits, San Francisco only throws 42.86% of the time when in the red zone. Really, really low. They were the lowest team in adjusted pass rate in the red zone last year. San Francisco just wants to run the ball. They don't have any upside as a stack. As individual plays, they're better, but they're not that good. And then when you look at the Philadelphia side, Philadelphia is better. Like, Philadelphia passed quite a bit. 72% of the time they passed in the adjusted script. In terms of being in the red zone, let's see, they were really, really high. Passed 83% of the time in the red zone. Super duper high. So that's really, really nice. Like, Philadelphia side actually looks pretty good, going with Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Reagor. It's pretty cheap. It has a really, really high 5X percentage. It looks like it's like the second highest on the slate, third highest just behind Jacksonville. So Philadelphia is pretty cheap. They're in the spot where they're up against San Francisco. The one thing, right, is that San Francisco, like, who do you bring it back with? Do you bring it back with Deebo Samuel, who looked really, really good in week 1? Do you bring it back with Brandon Ayuk, who might not even fucking play? Like, it's really, really hard. So I don't know how I'm going to approach the situation. I'll have more thoughts on it in the morning with the notes. Moving on to the Rams. So this Rams-Colts game, like, the Rams project okay, but they're negative leverage because the ownership is supposed to be high. So a stack here, I don't love it. And we kind of saw, like, Matthew Stafford looked really, really good, but I don't know, up against this Indianapolis team, like, they might not have to push the envelope. The goal line splits for the Rams, they were at 60%, which is about middle of the road. In terms of pass splits, they were really, really low. Only 61% in the adjusted script, which is the 6th worst in the entire league after week 1. So I think that they're actually, like, not that good in terms of upside. I think that they would prefer to run the ball, actually, a lot of the time. Indianapolis wasn't that better. 64% of the time they passed in the adjusted split. And then in the red zone, they were the 3rd lowest in the entire league. Just 40% of their plays were pass plays. So, like, the only thing that I want to mention in this game, really, I don't mind if you guys go with a Ram stack, but, like, Jonathan Taylor is underpriced. And I think that there are not enough people that realize what his receiving share was. Like, if he's only going to be 4% owned in this spot, he's massive leverage. right? Because like nobody's going to have him. He had a massive mark share. I think he had like 7 targets, and he had the vast majority of the rushing work. Like Jonathan Taylor, his usage was really, really, really good in week 1. So I think in week 2, like if he's going to be only 4% owned, there's a lot of reason to like want to prioritize him. He's the main thing that I care about in this game. I don't mind stacking it. I guess you can go with the Rams with like a Michael Pittman Jr. comeback or like a Zach Pascal comeback if you want, but I don't like the Indianapolis offense outside of those running backs. So I just like Jonathan Taylor the most in this game. All right, some questions while I drink some water. How are you approaching early game roster construction with late swaps seeming so important? Late swap is not that important in terms of like your roster construction. Late swap is just really important to utilize throughout the day. So like there's no reason to build a lineup that has a lot of late swap equity just so that you can use late swap equity if you are avoiding really, really good plays earlier on in the day. So like if the optimal lineup comes with all games that start at 11 a.m. and you built for like a late slate thing, like a late game thing, just because you wanted to utilize the late swap, like that's bad process. The reason why late swap is important, the reason why thinking about late swap is important is like if you have the stone nuts from the early games and you have like 3 or 4 players starting later, like you need to utilize late swap effectively in that situation. Like if you have the nuts, switch to players that are going to be really high owned in those late games if you can. If you're like behind the 8 ball, then you need to switch to lower owned players later on. So like just that's the way that you use late swap. And like we can handle that another day. I can talk more about like late swap and that kind of concept later on. But no, like roster construction wise, like I just want to build the best lineups that I can and then utilize late swap through the day if I have the opportunity to. And notice I said if I have the opportunity to, not if I have the need to. Too many people only use late swap when they need to instead of when they have the opportunity to. And that fucks over a lot of people, like a lot of like beginner to intermediate players. If I'm playing them as one-offs, you always pairing a QB, or you only have one wide receiver with your QB, or do you pair a tight end with wide receiver? It just depends. Like Noah Fant, I'll probably have in Denver sacks. Like I don't know. I'll probably utilize them as secondary. I like using them as my main stack piece, but like I utilize them in secondary stacks a lot, like with just a tight end and a wide receiver. So either way is fine. Just like trying to correlate them with something I think is important a lot of the time. Heard a lot of people compare Diggs' breakout last year to what they think Moore can do this season, but lighter given the lesser QB. Maybe. I think QB play has a lot to do with that. Like, I think Josh Allen had an incredible year, and Stephon Diggs is a super underrated route runner. Like maybe the 3rd best route runner in the entire league behind, like, Antonio Brown and Keenan Allen. And Stephon Diggs might be ahead of Antonio Brown at this point. I don't know. I just think he's super underrated. So, play Mixon. Yeah, Mixon's a good play. Like, I think I have him projected really, really well. I haven't projected okay. I have him projected at 16.5, but at just 10% ownership. But yeah, the Bears, like, if the Bears aren't going to push the pace, I think Cincinnati can just run the ball like they want to. So I don't mind Mixon at all. Where do you read the splits from for red zone goal line? So for now, I just have them like on my back end. Next week, they will be added to the models. I do usually have those and Vegas information in the models. I just haven't had them for the first 2 weeks because I wanted to clean up some other things. Higgins could have had an even better game, missed a lot of time with dehydration. How the fuck does that happen? But yeah, I was really high on Higgins. Taylor with Higbee is how you do running back tight end. Yeah, you can do that. Like, I think that's fine. That implies that the Colts are going to get out to a significant lead, though, with Higbee needing to get a lot of volume coming from behind. Did you late swap into Hill last week? No, I late swapped off of Hill last week. I late swapped, so OBJ got ruled out, and then I had like this really weird salary situation, and I had a Chiefs stack, and I ended up dropping down to a Green Bay stack, and yeah, so that sucked. But like, it was the right thing to do. What do I want to talk about the Najee Harris in the room? When we get to fucking running backs. When we get to running backs. Anyway, I'm gonna jump back in because we got to wrap this up. pretty quick. So Jacksonville, already talked about. Tom Brady and the Bucks. You can pretty much just like play them however you want to play them, honestly. Tampa Bay, like you can go Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. You can go Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski. You can go Tom Brady, Mike Evans with Antonio Brown. Like Tampa Bay is projected to score 32 real-life points. They're the biggest favorites on the slate. They are also the largest over-under or the largest team total on the slate. So like however you want to go about that, feel free to go about it. The only question that you have is who you utilize in the bring back. And that's harder because I guess that you would do Calvin Ridley. You could do Kyle Pitts. But, like, if the Falcons fucking suck, then I don't know if I want to bring anybody back. So, I don't know how I'm going to handle that situation. But Tampa Bay, you can stack them up however you want. I guess I'd probably try to bring it back with Calvin Ridley, but that's really, really expensive, I think. Like, if you try to build that out, we'll just try to build it out really quick. Chris Godwin and Rob Gronkowski with Calvin Ridley. Yeah, like that's super expensive. That takes up over half of your total salary. You're gonna have to have some really cheap running backs or wide receivers to make it work. And I don't know if I love that. Tampa Bay probably is not gonna be a team that I stack, just because I think that it's gonna be really hard to actually make a stack out of them and have a competitive roster with it. Chicago, already talked about. I think Chicago mostly sucks, but like I might end up going with their stack just simply because they're cheap, and I think that the only way that Cincinnati wants to pass a bunch is if Chicago actually puts their foot on the gas. Jacksonville, I don't mind a Jacksonville stack. Like I said, I prefer the Denver stack, but like the 5X is still really, really good here. DJ Chark is the main piece that we want here. The running back situation for Jacksonville is just a fucking shit show because Urban Meyer is a confirmed idiot. Carolina. So Carolina's going up against the Saints, and neither one of these teams really want to do a lot of passing. Like Carolina, the way that you would stack them is with Sam Darnold, DJ Moore, and Christian McCaffrey, and then I guess you'd bring it back with Alvin Kamara. But with both running backs in this game, like you can get the vast majority of the production from these teams if you just go Christian McCaffrey with Alvin Kamara. So, like, just do that. Like, that's your game stack. Just stack the two fucking giant fantasy point monster running backs and don't worry about the rest. If you do want to worry about the rest, like, we're going to have way low ownership on Marquez Callaway this week, and I think that there's reason to go with that. New Orleans did not want to pass last week. I suspect that they are going to do their best not to pass if they don't have to, so you would have to expect Carolina to get out to a lead if you want New Orleans to then try to catch them. And pass the ball from behind. So I would prefer to do a Carolina stack, I think, here with Sam Darnold, DJ Moore, and Christian McCaffrey, and bring it back with a New Orleans side, just because I think that that's like the most plausible way that both sides get upside. Let's see, Pittsburgh. So Ben Roethlisberger, Chase Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. Pittsburgh is facing the Raiders. Both of them project pretty badly. I don't know. Like, both these teams might pass a lot, right? They might pass a whole lot. When we go over and we look at the pass splits, Las Vegas was really, really high, passed 81% of the time in the adjusted script, and like that's not considering that they were down. Pittsburgh only 68% of the time, but then they still passed 69% of the time overall. The goal line splits, Las Vegas was still at 69%, which is very nice. Pittsburgh at 71%. So like these teams want to pass. There's upside. And like the upside is easily attainable, right? Like you can do a Pittsburgh stack with these three and bring it back with Darren Waller. You can do a Las Vegas stack with these three, even though I'd probably prefer Hunter Renfrow over Henry Ruggs, and bring it back with Deontay Johnson. Like, there's ways that this works. I think that the best way to roster Darren Waller is actually in a game stack here because people are not going to be doing that. And that would be the way that I would want to go about things. So, there's upside here. Projections don't like it because both these quarterbacks, like, are not super great. But going with a Pittsburgh stack since they're the favorites and going with Ben Roethlisberger with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, bring it back to Darren Waller. One, That gets you a lot of upside from your Pittsburgh stack on a team that wants to pass a lot and passes in the red zone. And 2, it gives you leverage off of Najee Harris, who's going to be the most popular player on the slate this week. And I think that it makes a lot of sense to go that route. I am not a Najee Harris person. I don't care that he played 100% of the snaps because I think Pittsburgh's a bad team and I don't think they're going to score a lot of points this year. So, like, I'm kind of like at a rock and a hard place. Like, do I want to play the Pittsburgh stack even though I think they suck to leverage Najee Harris, or do I want to play Najee Harris at really high ownership and just get different elsewhere? I don't know yet. But I do really like a Pittsburgh stack, bringing it back with Darren Waller. Or even better, a Las Vegas stack, bringing it back with Deontay Johnson, because that would imply that Las Vegas scored a bunch of points through the air and Pittsburgh then has to pass from behind and Najee Harris doesn't have the chance to get there. Fine, I'll show VPM. So when you look at the VPM values, like Najee Harris is just like the nuts. Like, VPM has him projected for 30 fantasy points. That means the props on him are super duper fucking high. And I understand why he's going to be popular. I get it. I just don't know that I'm going to go there. Miami I talked about. Not really a super big fan of Miami. I certainly prefer the other side of this with Buffalo. I'm just not going to stack Miami. Atlanta, Las Vegas, we talked about both of these. I actually do like Las Vegas stack. Atlanta, like, I'm not going to be stacking Atlanta. I just think they're so fucking bad. And the pass script was just so bad for them, and I don't think they have upside in this version of themselves. The Jets and the Patriots, you can mostly just write off. I think the Jets are going to be really spread out now that Jameson Crowder and Keelan Cole are back. I don't think Corey Davis is going to have near the same market share that he did. And that's why this projection is so low overall. And then New England, let's see, what was their pass split? It was really, really bad. So they passed only 54% of the time in the adjusted script. In the goal line, they were better. Looks like they were middle of the road, I think. Oh no, they were terrible. They only passed 50% of the time in the red zone. So yeah, there's just not a lot of upside here for stacking. Like, I think for one-offs, like, I really, really like Damian Harris for New England. Like, he's probably one of my favorite running backs this week. For the Jets, like, I don't really have any interest. But it's really just Damian Harris here. San Francisco we talked about. They just don't pass in the red zone, so they don't have a lot of upside. Cleveland, we didn't really talk about since they're facing Houston, but it's pretty much just Nick Chubb for me. Without OBJ there, I suppose you can go Jarvis Landry. It's not bad. David Njoku had a whole bunch of targets last week. I don't hate that either. The problem is that when you go and you look at the goal line splits, like, Cleveland has a 23% adjusted pass rate in the red zone. Like, they just don't give a shit about passing in the red zone. So they're just going to run it. And that just means that it's either going to be Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb with all the upside here, especially if they have as much control of the game as Vegas thinks they will. And that's going to do it. That's all the stacks. So we've now talked about every single game. Overall, like, I think there's a lot of upside in the Seattle-Tennessee game. I really like this. Probably my favorite game of the week. I will certainly have that stack. I do think that I'm going to come around and bite the bullet and go with the Pittsburgh stack just to leverage the Najee Harris chalk. And then I need to think about my third stack. I don't know if it's going to be Buffalo. I don't know if it's going to be Dallas Chargers. Like, it probably will be Dallas Chargers just because I'll be in the power sweep and, like, I don't need to get super duper duper different. But we'll see. I don't know. I do like that Denver game. Maybe I'll get my exposure there to just, like, the secondary stacks. Maybe I'll get my exposure to, I don't know, maybe I'll get exposure to the Chargers Cowboys in secondary stacks. We'll see how that goes. But overall, I think there's a lot to like on the slate. There's some really, really good leverage pieces. Basically anything outside of the Dallas Chargers and the Rams stacks are going to be pretty different. Hit some questions really quick before we go over position by position and just, like, kind of talk about where the leverage is and talk about where the ownership is going to be. Let's see. Am I playing Pascal if Pittman and Campbell are both out? No. I'll just play a lot of fucking Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. Maybe I'll play Pascal. He'll project way better if they're both out. But it'll just make me like Jonathan Taylor a lot more. Urban needs to take the USC job ASAP. He's not going to. He's getting fucking boatloads of cash from the Jags. And I do think the Jags will be better. I just think he's an idiot. Run back with Drake also appealing as he functions like pass catching back if they're down. Yes, but the Raiders really want to get Peyton Barber involved. That report is stupid. They were like, yeah, this is a really good opportunity for Peyton Barber. So, like, I already hammered the under on Kenyon Drake props. Like, hammered the under on Kenyon Drake props. I think I have him projected for, like, 43 total yards. Who do I think scores lower in the PSM model, Dalton or Bryan? Oh, dude, absolutely Dalton. It's tiny. It's, like, the smallest. Like, that dude's got, like, micro penis, for sure. In for James Banks with Najee Harris. Fucking, if it happens, I'll be so sad. I'll be annoyed. I'll have to pay out a whole bunch of bets, too. Because, like, I made a bunch of, like, season-long bets against Najee Harris. All right. Let's go position by position. Close this thing out. So, first we'll look at the overall ranges, right? Overall, we have some QBs up here, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. As we're looking at it, like, I'm on some players that are higher owned, but, like, the leverage overall is just, like, overwhelmingly in the Seattle side, right? We have a lot of upside on Cortland Sutton. Like, we have a lot of upside on Jamar Chase at 5K. There's a lot of upside. Jamie Harris is right here. But overall, like, this Russell Wilson with DK Metcalf stack just looks so fucking tasty. So tasty. We'll go into the QB ranges. So, QB, like, you don't really make or break yourself based on leverage with QB. Like, Justin Herbert might be at most 15% owned tomorrow or something like that. I don't think he's going to be that high owned, but Josh Allen, Russell Wilson just so far above the rest, sitting at medians above 30. And then you have a whole bunch of guys in this median 20 range, like Kyler Murray, I think is really good. Dak Prescott, Tom Brady. Teddy Bridgewater at 5,400 looks really, really good. How does he look in BPM? Good, right? Yeah, really, really good. I'm pretty much with Vegas on that one, which I really like to see. So that kind of solidifies my Denver love there. But yeah, quarterback pretty much just breaks down how you expect it to. Running back. Top overall projected running backs are going to be Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. I do really think that a game stack here makes a lot of sense, playing these two against each other. If we sort by LevX, the highest leverage on the slate is going to be Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and Jonathan Taylor. So paying up at these running back positions looks like there's a lot of leverage involved. And then there's Damian Harris and Darrell Henderson Jr., who both are not really getting that much ownership. When we look at negative leverage, it's pretty much just Najee Harris. But frankly, like, none of these guys look like that negative leverage. Personally, I only really start thinking about fading somebody if they're going to be negative 10% LevX. So, like, there's no running backs that I'm actively fading on this slate. Not even Najee Harris. Like, I'll play him if he fits. Looking at wide receiver. So top overall projected wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, Mike Williams, DK Metcalf, and CeeDee Lamb. So like these two against each other, that makes a lot of sense. DJ Chark is right there against Cortland Sutton. So like these are some pretty good secondary correlations that you can put together. I actually don't mind that at all. I'm actually surprised that DeAndre Hopkins projects as bad as he does. If we're looking at LevX, so the highest leverage on the slate, Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, DJ Chark. The lowest leverage, I would be fading Cooper Kupp and Chris Godwin here. Both just project for way too low to be getting the ownership that they are. Keenan Allen is kind of like that, but projecting a little bit better. So, like, I think that the biggest fade of wide receivers is definitely going to be Cooper Kupp. Projecting for 18, just getting way too much ownership for where he projects to finish. He has a 0% chance of being the top overall scoring wide receiver on the slate for me. So let's jump into tight ends here. The highest leverage is just going to be Darren Waller, Noah Fant, and then Dallas Goedert. I don't mind any three of them, but like really you're only gaining leverage on these two, Darren Waller, Noah Fant. When we're looking at negative leverage, the largest negative leverage is going to be Tyler Higbee, but it's not anything really worth fading. He projects okay. The ownership is okay at tight end. Like, he's not a bad play. But yeah, I mean, I guess like you can kind of see the theme here. Like the Rams look like they're the main leverage fade on this slate. Not the Chargers, not the Cowboys, but the Rams. So like if you want to fade a chalk spot, it's the Rams for sure. Finally, we'll look at the VPM model. So like the highest in terms of VPM, going to be Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Josh Allen, Nick Chubb, and Tom Brady. Nick Chubb being this high is really, really nice. His rushing props are super fucking hot. We can just ignore this guy, just redacted, like this guy doesn't even exist. And then these guys look really, really good. Pater has them projected pretty well as well. VPM is much higher on Nick Chubb, but I'm still high on Nick Chubb as well. So, in terms of the highest difference, Derrick Henry actually has the highest difference than Najee Harris and Nick Chubb. So it's higher on running backs for sure. The smallest difference, or the largest differences in terms of Pater over Vegas is going to be Cortland Sutton, DJ Chark, Mike Williams, and Jamar Chase. So yeah, hopefully that is good enough. Right? Yeah, that was pretty good. So I think there's a lot to like on the slate. I already told Margaret that I was going to be winning 150K tomorrow, so I'm going to be taking down the power sweep. Nobody else enter it. You're just wasting your time. It's going to be a really good slate. I think there's a lot of upside. I think there's a lot of spots that you can go that are not going to be nearly high enough owned. So should be a pretty good slate. I am hoping that Seattle, Tennessee ends up taking down the slate. I will probably have a Dallas Chargers stack just because I think that it's a really good spot as well. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Make sure you go get a subscription over at paterdfs.com if you don't already have one. And make sure you subscribe to the Twitch channel too. I try to go live multiple times throughout the week. I'm going to go back to doing slate reviews on Mondays starting next week as well. So a lot more streams coming up moving forward. But thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I will have my Sunday notes up tomorrow morning as well, about an hour before the slate. So tune in for those on the site. They were free last week. They will not be free this week. So make sure you get a subscription. Have a good night. I appreciate y'all, and I will talk to you all later.